morning we're going to be starting very soon with an interview with Craig Sauve, who is visiting us from Montreal. He's going to explore the amazing electoral victory that happened there in that city before Christmas. And following Craig, we're going to hear from the very energizing Dennis Pinon about proportional representation. So, without further ado, Craig, would you come up and we'll begin. An amazing electoral victory happened in Montreal in the fall. Can you tell us a little bit about Montreal so we understand the context?
Sure. So Montreal, about in the city, is about 1.7 million people. It's on an island, so that really gives our geography very clearly. Founded in 1642 was our 375th anniversary last year, and that was a big hubbub in Montreal, lots of investment, lots of parties for that. When we talk about the governance of Montreal, it's going to get really complicated because over the years of the history, many other cities that were on the island began to become amalgamated with Montreal. And there was a big amalgamation project done in 1998 that created a borough system in Montreal. So not only is the city administered by the central administration at City Hall, but there are 19 boroughs with 19 borough halls, which have their own administrations, their own councils, and their own mayors. When it comes to having an election in Montreal, to have a full slate in Montreal, you have to have 103 candidates. It's very complicated. But like in Vancouver, there is a party system, and this is my party over here, it's Projet Montréal, which means Project Montreal. We were founded in 2004. It was like sort of a grassroots citizen initiative party with a sort of green left axis. We wanted to really divert the dialogue. It was really two old school type mayor type people that were running the political show in Montreal that were just nitpicking over small things. We felt fundamental change was necessary, transformative change was necessary. So we became a party that moved towards greening streets, pedestrianizing streets, bike infrastructure, massive investments in public transit, massive investments in housing, planning neighborhoods instead of letting free rein to developers and the private market. So that was really our axis, and our growth was really long. In the first election in 2005, we got 1 seat out of 103. And in 2017, well, we won.
Well, let's get to that for a moment, because you weren't expected to win.
No.
Projet Montreal was the underdog. You were not expected to win. And this is part of a global pattern. There's been a lot of elections like that. Some of them, like the one down south, didn't turn out too well. But some of them are turning out very well indeed. Can you tell us why you think that Projet Montreal prevailed?
Well, that's a big question, of course. I think it's a lot about the context of what was going on in Montreal as well. It's been a long time that Montreal has been waiting for serious investment in public transit, been waiting for serious change in leadership, carrying ideas. Moving forward as a city, we felt we were being left behind by the rest of the world, a lot of people. But the context was strange for us because our leader had left our party in the last mandate and left for the governing party. Imagine your leader crosses the floor. That was pretty devastating to us. He was the founder of Projet Montreal along with the other citizens, and he was an urban planner. So we lost him, and we had a leadership race. And it's always tough in a party to have a leadership race. I hate leadership races. I find it's like, your sisters and brothers are fighting against each other, and there's little groups in the side and whispering and stuff. But we had a leadership race, and we had a candidate we elected a candidate through Valerie Plante, who most Montrealers had no idea who she was. I mean, 95% of Montrealers had no idea. And she was a city councillor, our first-term city councillor in St. Marie district. So we were facing a mayor who was his first term. His name is Denis Coderre. And he was extremely well known in Quebec politics. He was a cabinet minister for the federal Liberals. He ran so many elections. He's won every election that he's ever run. Very big figure, very loud, very outspoken. He was in the media all the time. So I have a few slides to show you the change in the voting that happened to lead to just so you get a little background. So here's 2015. Denis Coderre's party has 57% support. We have 13, and I was our interim leader, Good days. There's 2 other parties that sort of didn't really make it the whole way. So that's November 2015, we're a long shot. 2017, we've been working really hard as opposition to get our name out there, to get Valerie out there, and Denis Coderre was having a really bad year for many reasons, so we got up to 29%. In September, We were catching up. We fought really, really hard, and I'll show you something that happened a little bit later between that, for that last poll and this poll. We're at 25%. Then in October, 38%. At the end of October, we took the lead a week before Election Day, and then you can see the final results that we won. So, pretty amazing stuff. This is the city map. So you can see the 19 boroughs there. The green spots are our boroughs where we improved a lot, and one of the oranges also are boroughs too. And you can see we won a really far-reaching suburban borough, which is Il-Bazar in the northwest, so we weren't just the central party. But big growth there, and it was a pretty amazing thing. Nobody thought we were going to win. I mean, no political pundit would ever have said, Valerie Plante is going to be the next mayor of Montreal. Montreal is going to win. It was Denis Coderre is going to win, but how much? How many boroughs will Denis Coderre win? How little will Projet Montreal have? And that was really the question. But we saw an opportunity there that we had to seize. We felt that Denis Coderre was weak on so many issues that he had espoused zero vision, zero clarity, and we saw a traditional lack of investment in many different sectors in Montreal that we pushed really hard.
So, what did you think 2 or 3 days out? Did you think that the tide was turning, that you might be forming government?
We started to talk about it, obviously, and then we started talking internally. I had big hopes, but you never think that you're gonna make a big win. It was one of those moments where you figured, the traditional parties, and you gotta imagine that Denis Coderre is really linked with the Liberal Party of Quebec and the Liberal Party of Canada, who in Montreal have a huge history. They have a huge ground game. They have a huge machine. So we had our own machine that we've been building from a grassroots perspective for many years. But you always sort of assume, the traditional party is always going to win. So in the back of my mind, I had a big doubt, but I had a big hope as well. And election night was like winning the Stanley Cup and being on the team that won. It was always one of the coolest feelings you could ever feel. I remember I got up on stage, one of the candidates were up on stage, and I let loose a barbaric yell. I was just raised my I was so happy. Because I've been an activist in the party since 2006, and I've occupied positions on local riding associations. Our boroughs have riding associations for Projet Montreal. That's how we're sort of designed. So it was amazing to be there. But it took a big leap to get us out there and to get known.
So it sounds like Denis Coderre lost connection to the people of Montreal. What did Projet Montreal do to establish that connection?
Well, again, I think our position as a grassroots party was really important in the boroughs that we had won previously. You see here we did win 11 boroughs. We have presence in the 13. And we had our local councillors on the ground working before. We had riding associations. We had local events, local conferences. We had memberships that were doing drives. We had all sorts of events. We tried to be present everywhere. If there was a street closing for a commercial street, we had a kiosk on the street, and we bring a proposition to the table every year in the gay village. There's a community day where people have kiosks. We brought projects to the table. We did polling. We spoke to people about urban planning in the neighborhood, how we can go forward. It wasn't just here's a badge and thanks for calling. It was really a lot more fundamental than that. And I think Montreal did appreciate our rigor in that measure. But it was really hard to get known and to get Valerie known. And I wanted to show you the next slide that's really important. This is what we put out to get Valerie known. Like I said, like 5% of Montrealers do it. It's controversial, right? We put this out in August, before that poll that shows us 14 points behind, to one that shows us 5 points behind. Nobody knew who Valerie Plante was. In September, it was 40% of Montrealers had no idea who she was, and only 10% didn't know who Denis Coderre was. We had a huge, just a lack of recognition for who Valerie was. And so we put this out, and we put it in strategic places around the city in big posters, like next to certain TV stations, for example. And it's a controversial message, and it caused debate, and we knew it caused debate because we're talking about a feminist approach to politics, our first potential female mayor in Montreal. So we wanted to really spark that conversation, and it blew up. And Valerie was all over in the media in about 2 days. And I was door knocking during the time before it came out and after, and then when I was knocking doors, they were saying, "Oh, the right man for the job, the right man for the job," and everybody knew who Valerie Plante was. It was amazing. She was on all the breakfast shows, the evening shows, the newspapers, and this image got spread all over Montreal.
So was Valerie prepared for that sudden uptick?
Yes, I think she was. She's we call her a giant slayer in Montreal because to get to where she was, she had to be a city councillor. She had to beat a really well-known ex-PQ leader, Louise Arène, to win her seat. Nobody thought she was going to win that seat. She won in 2013. In 2016, in leadership, she beat out the favorite who 2/3 of the caucus was supporting, a man named Guillaume Lavoie, very talented young politician. She beat him to become leader. And then here, when she was facing up Denis Coderre, she had seen other battles before. And she'd been in public before, and she'd had that experience. So she got out there, and she was an extremely efficient communicator, which also helps too. She knew her terrain, she knew the job, and she was able to convince Montrealers that she was someone that was worth looking at. And of course, the party had been working for so long on our policy development. We were working so hard in our boroughs, and so every borough we had a local platform with local ideas that this street we're going to pedestrianize, this park we're going to invest in. It was very clear, so when voters came to see us, they knew exactly what we were about and where we were going to go.
That sounds like a really interesting structure. Was it hard to set up, the party structure?
Extremely hard to set up. It is, right? I mean, and there's certain boroughs, obviously, that have maybe demographics which are less easy to organize. I mean, when you get to more suburban areas, sometimes for green left parties like ours, it's a little more difficult to find that critical mass of people, places where there's less community groups active, and there's less really intense issues going on that are really out there. So it's hard to organize, but it's worth it because the by-elections pay off, and every by-election win that comes along pays off. Developing those local platforms is so important. And I know it's difficult in Vancouver, right, because they're like citywide councillors, so how do you talk to people on a local level? Well, I guess that's a strategy for the next parties to think about, but I think it's super important, because when you're talking about municipal politics, it's really about the locality. It's really about the neighborhood. That's what people want to see. It's like, okay, I get it that you want to, increase funding in transit, but what are you going to do about the dangerous intersection in my neighborhood? What are you going to do about the lack of investment in the sports facilities for my kids when they go play soccer? I can see them, they're falling in the holes in the fields. What are you going to do about that? That's what people want to hear about as well.
So were there one or two people who were leading this organization? How did it grow?
Well, I guess again, it was a long story, It was 2005, our first election, like I said, one elected official only. But the grassroots were there to carry all the boroughs that were present. In Montreal, I don't know if it's the same in BC, but in Quebec, all the borough councils and city councils, there's a question period. So citizens can go and ask questions directly to the mayors. We had presence in the boroughs, asking questions, learning about the issues locally. We tried to locate candidates in all the elections that were involved already in local issues. So, I remember we talked to some candidates who were opposing this development, who were proposing this pedestrian street, or really talking about the financing of the local cultural associations. We talked to them, try to get diverse candidates as well, representing all sorts of different communities, to try to build those slates. And so that took a long time. In 2009, we had an election. We got 14 seats. And then 2013, when I first came in, we got 28 seats. And now we have 51 seats. At City Council, there's 65. So we managed to go up slowly but surely, but it takes a long time to build. It takes a lot of devotion. But we had a grassroots base, and our party had, at one time, 6,000 members. 6,000 members in Montreal, active, doing things, door knocking. They're on Facebook, they're on Twitter, they're writing letters to the editor, they're active in all the neighborhoods.
So, you connected very well with people. What did you do? Were there any specific communication tools you would recommend to your colleagues here?
Absolutely. I mean, I think honestly, and we were talking about this before, our air game was the best it's ever been, and our air game probably put us over the top. Our ground game was always there to get us the seats. In 2013, we came third place, and yet we were the official opposition, and we had a lot of seats, because our ground game just got us elected seats, but we couldn't get them in air. And this time we decided we were going to really invest in our air game. We're going to think about it. We're going to have good strategists, consult experts. And we were very daring in what we were saying. We were very clear about what we said. We took chances. We said, you go big or you go home, right? And when you're fighting someone like Denis Coderre, or we'll see in the federal elections coming up as well, if you're going against Justin Trudeau, you go half measure, it's going to be difficult to beat Justin Trudeau. Same thing with Denis Coderre. So we have to put it all out there and go and be daring and be and be very clear where we're going. So I'll show you the next slide as well, which I think is important. We proposed a new metro line, which is a huge investment, but an essential investment for Montreal. Mobility was one of our biggest issues in Montreal. The traffic jams are terrible. The metro jams are terrible. You can see the orange line on the east. It gets packed during rush hours. It's sardine cans, and you can't run any more trains along the lines because they're almost at full capacity. We're trying to bring that. They're run every 2 minutes, and it's the largest capacity subway in Canada. So we proposed the pink line, and the pink line obviously is a nice trend, and it's refocusing again the fact that we have potentially a first woman mayor of Montreal, which would be the relief line for the orange line and the blue line, and just give massive mobility. To do that, we did an immense amount of research. We worked with the local university. There's a sort of chair of mobility studies. They did all sorts of simulations for us. We prepared the techniques, the costing out, everything was ready. And when we brought that to Montrealers, we brought that to the press, we gave them a 1-hour technical briefing beforehand to give them all the information and backing with all the people and all the experts we consulted. So the press were ready for it. Then Valerie went and presented it. It made a big splash in Montreal. This was a daring, communications tactic that we used, and we really believe in this project. It's something that we've been working on for many, many years in the party. And now we're the administration, and we're working to build this subway line. We're working very hard to put all the pieces together to put the project forward. But it became a big marker of our campaign. People talked about the pink line. They talked about it, and it's one subway line. You might not live near the subway line, but everybody understands the symbology behind it. It's mobility, it's getting around, it's public transit. It's a very, very powerful symbol. And so that became something that people understood. And as we can see, it goes east to west in Montreal, goes from Lachine to Montreal Nord. And so Montreal Nord as well is a place that's known in Saint Michel and up in those areas to have poverty issues, inclusion issues. And to say that they deserve a metro line of quality and quality mobility as well, another powerful symbol, which we want to do. We want to open up the neighborhoods to this kind of mobility and this kind of opportunity. So this symbol was extremely important. And so other things like that we try to bank on. And maybe in times of, in the 90s or the 2000s when it was all about cutting expenditures and cutting deficits, that would have been crazy. But I think the tide has turned. I think people want to see investments. People know it's necessary, and people are willing to pay for it. So, and it showed because this has massive support in Montreal. And now the mayors of the cities outside the island are saying, yeah, we want the pink line too, because they know they can get their buses to it. That's going to open corridors for them. So we're getting metropolitan support for this big issue. So I think that's a lesson. Like, go for it. All your election campaigns, make them reasonable. Do the studies. You have the time. I know it's in a few months. There's some pointers you can go out with that I think will really characterize your party and your movement.
So you said something about the tide has turned. So tell me a little bit more about that.
I guess it's something we all think about. We saw at a federal level that we had a candidate for prime minister say, "Oh, we're at a deficit. It's time we invest." And I think we're feeling that in all our communities. And that's what I was hearing all yesterday. Needs for investment in housing, needs for investment in mobility, green space. We know we're there. We know we're there collectively. So I think it's time to just assume that. And now that the pendulum is swinging in our favor as progressives, it's time not to be afraid. It's time to be bold and daring and push out those projects because there is a window of opportunity we have right now. And I think Canadians all over the place know that it's absolutely necessary if we want to have societies that are inclusive and prosperous, that investments need to be made. People are willing to come back. We're sort of, thank goodness, getting over Reaganism.
Thank you. Does anyone have a question you'd like to pose to Craig? Yeah. Go ahead. Moderate.
How's the press treating you now that you have defeated the dragon?
So if everyone didn't hear that, how's the press treating you now that the dragon has been defeated?
It's been a little rocky at the start because we're doing a lot of change and we're different. I haven't seen an administration like us, but we're backed by facts, we're backed by science, and so a lot of people are really interested in seeing how the change is going. In our boroughs, a lot of new boroughs that we won where it was sort of old school, very patriarchal, very authoritarian style. We've opened them up so much. There's much more transparency. The borough council is a lot more interesting for people, so you can really feel it locally. That people are like, breath of fresh air. So we're continuing in that vein. And you know, I think actually our focus on mobility and transit will have an effect on the provincial campaign, because we're going to provincial elections in October, because all the political parties, even the right-wing parties, are starting to be really open to public transit investments. And we were able to secure a big investment in buses. We grew our fleet by 16% within about 2 months of buses. Really huge mobility. We did a deal with the Quebec government. They were willing to finance it. Something we really pushed during the campaign. Once we got in, I said, "You're right. It's mobility time." And these are Quebec Liberals. These are center-right governments. We're willing to invest in transit. So the metropolis of Quebec, as well as I'm sure the metropolis of BC, will be a huge effect if we have an administration that's progressive and has very clear ideas and very bold ideas. It'll help the pendulum swing in the right way.
So just to follow up a little bit on the press coverage of Montreal, were there surprises when you got the keys to City Hall?
Yeah, how much information is out there? Being in opposition, you assume a lot of things. Oh, they know about this, or they have this information. But the amount of stuff that was going on in the city that we weren't aware of was breathtaking. And having the civil servants really happy, because Mr. Godert himself was very authoritarian and kind of rough. And the civil servants were very pleased to have somebody new, so they were really forthright and gave us a ton of information, guided us in so many different ways. That was really surprising. And the feeling around City Hall was really great. So we were able to move really quickly on a lot of issues. We'll pick up a lot of files that were dropped by last administration. And that was a big surprise. So, all the things I assumed, a lot of them were true. And frankly, I think Montrealers have no idea to which point it was a good idea to change government, because I think there was a big austerity issue that was on the way, and a lot of things were happening that were very scary in Montreal, but we managed to reverse those. And so a lot of things we jumped super quickly as a prepared political party with a clear vision, and councillors that were already experienced. We managed to change the orientations of a lot of projects to make them a lot more progressive, a lot more interesting.
So one final follow-up question. Now that you have the path ahead of you, you've seen additional challenges. How is Projet Montreal communicating what's happening in order to keep people in the loop?
Oh, well, we have our local team obviously doing a lot of the communicating for our local issues. We still try to use as many images as possible. Try to be out there in the media, be more present in the media, answer their questions very clearly and honestly. And I think it's good to be honest right away and very clear where you want to go, and help people along the way. As your projects are coming, explain to them where they are along the way. That's something we've always been trying to do. Right now, one of the jobs I'm working on is really difficult. I'm in charge of rewriting the animal bylaw in Montreal, and which means talking.
And that's been in the news a little bit, so
Yeah.
the animal bylaw. Yeah.
Very much so. And that's something we did a very vast consultation on. So we did a 4-pronged approach on consulting. Again, the pit bull ban is a big issue in Quebec. We reversed that in Montreal. We suspended our pit bull ban. We consulted scientists, veterinarians, biologists, behaviorologists, dogs. We did an expertise consultation. We did a public consultation with 18 roundtables. We did a 12,000. There was a web poll that we put out. 12,000 Montrealers responded, and We also did a Leger sort of focus group, man in the street, woman in the street sort of consultation, and we're moving forward with that. So we're keeping Montrealers abreast of where we're going with this file. And it's animal control is a huge file in Montreal and Quebec right now. Everybody's talking about it, so that's one that we're trying to guide along with.
And that's yours.
Montrealers informed about all the process and where we're going.
And you're leading that one.
And well, there was the last administration brought in a pit bull ban that was very controversial, and again against best practices and against scientific information. So it was something that was also I spoke on as council. So the role that I was given to try to guide and shepherd through the process. But and then Quebec is also working on legislation that is against the direction of Montreal. So there's that interesting thing. But I think we'd be able to have a positive effect on Quebec legislation.
We were speaking earlier about the impact of social media, and we touched lightly on Facebook. And I did ask if there were what kind of data you you were using for Facebook. That was a bit cheeky. But maybe you could talk a bit about that.
Well, we contacted Vladimir Putin. Meeting in a hotel. I think Facebook has a ton of pitfalls, but a ton of opportunities too. I use it really effectively, I think, talking with people in the neighborhoods. The district that I represent has 4 different distinct neighborhoods with different demographics, different languages spoken, different economics. And so there are Facebook groups in those little neighborhoods, and people go there to complain, to offer items, to discuss things, and I'm very present on those local groups. And it's an amazing way. I'm sure in every town there's at least one where people talk a little politics, and they talk a little bit of local issues. Go there, talk to people, because if we can't knock in big high-rise towers, you need to get to be able to talk and discuss with people a little bit. So there's a neighborhood that I have, for example, that is all high-rise towers, condo towers, where as soon as somebody sees you knocking doors in there, you get kicked out. It happens all the time, so you can't really knock doors in these places. So I use Facebook a lot to invite people to forums, discuss with them about particular issues. I jump in on certain issues that were being discussed about and offering our position on these things, putting documents on there. So using the Facebook groups can be a really efficient way to talk to people in localities. You can also do it with Twitter. Twitter is a really good way to get yourself out there in general, using hashtags. And you can also follow people that live in your neighborhood, people that you might be targeting in your wards. And how you do that, you find perhaps, let's say, a local bakery, and all the people that follow the local bakery are probably people that live around the bakery. You follow them, they might follow you back, and if they see you're the local candidate, they go, oh, okay, follow back, and then you can show what you're like and show what your ideas are, and talk a little bit with them and respond. So I really believe in social media as a great opportunity to connect with voters. Again, it's not necessarily going to lead directly to data unless you're data mining, and that's something we did really. We didn't data mine in our party, but it's something that you can really use to talk with people. But it does take a commitment, because once you jump into that pool, you get really wet, and there's wet or you're dry. You know what I mean? And so if you want to be doing social media, you have to assume that there's going to be interactivity. And without interactivity, it's not as good. It's only one way. There'll be less reaction, less good impact with your social media interaction. So we gave social media courses to our councillor candidates, our mayoral candidates. We helped them, we coached them, something we still do, because that's always evolving. But I would use everything: Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, Instagram. Use it all. It can be an amazing window.
Thank you. Do you have anything else you might offer to our call?
Go home, I think. If you want to get involved, put it all out there. Every second counts. As we know, a lot of us have done campaigns before. Go knock as many doors as you can. Go to every event you can. Be on social media. I think I'll be following you out here for sure. I think there's some great races that are going to be happening. I think the municipalities hold so much potential for change and can really sway the superior governments with their ideas and their forthrightness and their boldness. So let's hope progressives win everywhere and they win big.
Join me in thanking Craig.